I can't even begin to chronicle the amount of life-changing experiences that happened over the course of a decade. That's almost impossible. I barely remember things that happened to me yesterday. And that goes for games too. If I were to try to tell you my top 10 radical games or whatever from this past decade, it'd be a terrible list. I probably wouldn't like it, so I know most of you wouldn't. But instead, to cap off the decade and season 3 of Command Prompt, I'm going to go over not my favorites or the most impactful games of the 2010s, but instead just talk about some of my most fondly remembered games of this decade. And let's go ahead and get some of the tearjerkers out of the way now. Never played Doom Eternal, never played Bloodborne, never played God of War, and probably a few more that I would have loved if I had played them. These are just some games that I constantly find myself wanting to go back to months after I put the controller down. And just because a game was popular or wildly influential, it doesn't mean it was something I found myself thinking about often. And I apologize if most of the games are kind of backloaded on the latter half of the decade, but what can you do? That's just how brains work. Oh, and just in case you don't make it to the end to hear it, there will be a poll for what our Season 4 premiere will be in the description. Be sure to vote if you care to. This is a very personal, very laid-back look at the games I remember the most fondly from the 2010s. What's a good video on Command Prompt without at least a passing mention or section dedicated to Sonic the Hedgehog? Well, the first stop on this trip down memory lane quickly fills that quota. Sonic Generations is a game that I have memories with dating all the way back to high school. It was released in 2011, and this was before I could even drive. I had been following the build-up to the release of Generations, and on that day, my dad and I were just home alone, and I asked him if he would mind taking me to get the new Sonic game. He agreed, and we left for GameStop. There's no profound message there, I just remember my dad taking me to go get this game on a nice afternoon in 2011. It was a really good memory, and to boot, the game itself is in my top 3 Sonic games ever. I won't repeat myself like I probably will anyway later on, but I think Sonic Adventure is peak Sonic gameplay. The control is perfection, the levels are all incredible, the soundtrack is just... So when Generations has the audacity to recreate levels and scenarios from that game and a hodgepodge of Sonic's other titles, you know it better be good, and Generations is good. I honestly can't sit here and tell you that I go back to this game for classic Sonic's gameplay, because he's no Genesis 2D Sonic for sure, but the 3D modern boost Chili Dog Supreme gameplay is at its best. The level design for these stages is so amazing and well done. The branching paths and extra sections are hidden and spread out so well that people were still finding new ways to complete these levels years and years after the game was released. And as I said in our fever dream of a Sonic video earlier this year, the mods. The modding community has been going so strong for this game. Seeing the fans take it upon themselves to add stages from other Sonic games and even entire sections of other Sonic games makes the PC version superior by a landslide. I 100% completed the original Xbox 360 version in high school, and I haven't gotten tired of it yet. Sonic Generations is a game worthy of your time, and a game that stands out as one of the Blue Hedgehog's best outings to date. It's really funny to think back to when this game came out, and it basically started a whole new conversation about difficulty in video games. Some were up in arms because they simply weren't good enough to make it through the game and see everything it had to offer. I empathize with them, sure, but at the same time, a challenging game has always been something I welcome. And most games these days don't really have a steep challenge unless it's specifically marketed to, or it comes from a difficulty slider, or a super tough enemy that just takes an hour to beat because they have a lot of health. But Sekiro stands out to me as a game that gives the player everything they need to succeed, but asks so much of them that it's almost unfair. But only almost. The deflection-based combat on display here is so fast-paced and punishing that it's addicting. I've seen people since compare it to a rhythm game, and I think that's perfect. Every enemy has attack animations that are timed out so particularly that to deflect them, you have to remember the flow in your head. Adding in counter maneuvers and the sound design that never fails to make me melt in my gamer chair, and you have a challenge that's instantly gratifying to overcome, and even more gratifying to master. When you're battling two different enemies at the same time, it's essentially like having to tap along to two separate BPMs, or you'll die. Some fights are of course a little better than others, as you could expect. I still don't particularly like the Ghost Monk, but that could just be me holding on to my bitter feelings. I still have nightmares. But when you do take these huge, unstoppable enemies down, it feels incredible. I really don't think I'll ever forget the first time I beat Ishin. I was getting so unbelievably frustrated on this fight. I thought this was the most unfair, difficult, bullshit boss I have ever fought. But if I go back and look at the footage from my first attempts, I can totally see why I kept losing. Just a bunch of rookie mistakes. Once you learn one of these bosses, you kind of pick up on the moves that you should counter and how, and the moves you should just kind of leave alone. And looking back, that was probably one of my favorite things about Sekiro. Learning. Not just all of the different patterns for bosses and enemies, but all the other secrets and hidden aspects of the game. You can do some things in the game far outside of the intended order here, and that's always great for replayability. It does have its flaws, like, really Sekiro, you're gonna try to teach me a crucial mechanic in the middle of this difficult fight, and then immediately kill me for not paying attention? Oh, that's so nice of you! If there was ever a game that I wish I could go back in with a fresh pair of blind eyes, it would be Sekiro.
Previously on The Walking Dead.
I won't say too much on the first season of Telltale's The Walking Dead, mainly because the story that it tells you is one that I think anyone should experience, not just people who enjoy video games. I played this during high school at the recommendation of Nick and Elliot, and I didn't expect to enjoy it because it just wasn't my style of game, but its characters and tone changed my outlook so fast. I don't want to spoil anything here, but since my initial playthrough, I've played through the game a second time. I'm in the process of watching Kelly play through it. I played Season 2 and the Michonne side story. I don't think the future games ever reach the highs of Season 1, but that's already really hard to do. The relationship between Lee and Clementine is one that is engaging and evergreen. Again, I don't want to spoil a single thing about the first season, but if you have any interest yourself, or you can find a way to sit down and play it with a friend or a significant other, I implore you to do so. Oh, and the impact this game has had on me is illustrated by the fact that I call my puppy Sweet Pea by default. Whoa, don't leave, please, let me explain myself. I don't mean Halo 5, the major letdown of a Halo experience. I mean Halo 5, the fast-paced arena shooter with great sound design and intense gameplay. But still, don't go, I got some stuff to say. I have many fond memories of Guardians multiplayer. I've mentioned it before once or twice, but I think this multiplayer is fantastic. I really love all the Spartan abilities, man. The charge was great for making an entrance, and the little openable paths were so cool. It made it feel like you were really taking place in this battle. I wish more multiplayer games would have interactable environments like this. It obviously should have been taken further, but it feels like the battle is really terraforming the landscape. The ground pound was so much fun, even if it wasn't all that practical, and the dash was great for helping with jumps or dodging in a fight. The added mobility really did make the game feel unique. It didn't go quite as far as everyone was going at the time, but they made their own way with it. I've heard a lot of people criticize it by saying, ugh, it doesn't feel like a Halo game to me. And yeah, I can kinda understand that, I'm with you, but I think I would say that Halo 4's multiplayer felt less like Halo than this. This was at least trying something new. The regular Slayer and objective game types were so fun. Even when playing casual matches, it still felt competitive. And I will stand behind this game's sound design until the cows come home. Just listen to this! Oh, Warzone. You were so much fun. I really enjoyed unlocking better weapons and constantly upgrading as the battle went on. Made it feel like a conflict was really increasing in scale after every death. The more powerful variations of existing weapons were so cool, and having the AI enemies on the battlefield was so great in giving an interesting side objective to fight for. It could have been something dumb like go in the center of the map and hold down a button to capture a point or something like, every other game. But it's honestly a shame that this one isn't joining the MCC and coming to PC. I'd pay for the multiplayer alone, but I suppose it's not all bad with how Infinite is looking. Okay, my final hot take of this section is that I'm hoping aspects like the armor abilities find new life somehow in Infinite. Okay, now you can click off the video. If there's one game that I probably have had most consistently on my mind this decade, it's Pokémon GO. Probably because it was a literal phenomenon. It still is. Niantic pulls in truckloads of money every day from Pokemon GO, and the support has never really stopped. It feels like every time I go on vacation with my family, my love for this game is reinvigorated. We will literally be walking to go do whatever it is we're going to do that night in Florida or somewhere else, and we'll probably have a squad of 5 or 6 people playing Pokemon. I have so many that I know I can just call up and ask if they want to go play Pokemon today. Oh, okay, well, I could have done that last year. I am still constantly opening it up to get challenges done, get candies from my mons with higher stats, and send gifts to my friends. I have so many Pokemon that are starred because they all have great stats, and I plan on leveling them up so I can evolve them into my next Rhyperior or Porygon Z. I've had some Pokemon for years. I caught some of them while I studied abroad in Ireland, and for that very reason, I have sentimental value in this free mobile game. I just recently finished the challenge to get Celebi, my favorite Pokemon. He sucks competitively, sure, but I spent so much time working towards getting him, and it was all worth it. It felt like a journey. When Niantic and Nintendo set out to make an authentic Pokemon experience that makes you consider things a real trainer would have to, I don't think anyone thought it would fail, but I certainly never thought it'd have my attention for as long as it has. Okay, so I know this game is actually kind of broken and has a lot of problems, and the physics are kind of weird on the legs sometimes, but I've had my ear to the ground waiting for some kind of update on the sequel, so I guess I kind of like it. No way. I think I'm just a sucker for Star Wars and this style of combat. Parrying in this game can't happen as fast as it does in Sekiro, but good lord, the impact makes you feel so good. And when it's accompanied by one of those special counter-attack animations... oh yeah, that's nice. Now, after going back and playing some of the new combat trials they added, I kind of feel like this game really doesn't work when this many enemies are thrown at you at once, because the parry doesn't operate like Sekiro's. It's much more timely and wants you to focus on one set of attacks. You can fight more than one enemy, sure, but it's gonna start to get messy when you do. This has been the case for most Souls games since the dawn of time though, so nothing new. The force abilities you get to use are still really good too. Pretty much the entire combat system still holds up, especially when against other Jedi opponents. I honestly just wish there were more enemies to fight with lightsabers in this game. I really feel like the sequel will knock this whole thing out of the park. I just want to know when it's coming out. From the combat, to the lackluster story, to the exploration, to the many bugs that I was thankful enough not to experience as badly as most. And with my recent, holy crap, divisive look at the Uncharted series, these big scripted segments come off as much less intrusive. Knowing that the gameplay backing it up is far more engaging than the 50th shootout, I can't wait to boot Fallen Order back up when I'm away from it. I still adore the Metroidvania approach to the structure. Running around all these Star Wars locations never gets old. I think the exploration was one of the biggest highlights of the game for me. Even if there weren't that many rewards that were worthwhile, like there are 20 different ponchos. Are you kidding me? I would rather them be fedoras at this point, Vince. Come on, dude. As a fighting game, fighter systems are so well made. The accessibility is immediately there with the inclusion of auto combos, and these are such a great way to casually welcome people into this game without overwhelming them with the mechanics that they need to obsess and nitpick over. They don't have to work super hard to remember combo strings or anything at the beginning. They have several strings of attacks that can be put together with a push of a single button. This lowers the bar of entry considerably. For that one guy who's sitting on the couch watching their fighting game fanatic friends play, they can kinda join in now. Sure, they'll probably get destroyed in that process, but they might have gotten a taste. And that's all that matters. Eventually, they'll probably want to start mixing it up and trying other methods of stretching out combos. And before you know it, something as simple as that has hooked them in, and they now own the game for themselves. I know this because it's exactly how it went for me. There are such distinct tier levels of players in this game, and it's so easy to actually carve out a playstyle when choosing your team of up to 3 unique Dragon Ball characters. Most operate fairly similarly, but some aren't as samey. Looking at you, Roshi. This goes for most fighting games, but you have to have super fast reaction times here, and you have to read or anticipate what your opponents will do. And if you get it right, man, it feels good to read your opponent and then pull off that string of attacks successfully. And with DLC characters that are consistently surprising, for better or for worse.
It's me, Goku! It's me, Goku! It's me, Goku! It's me, Goku!
I have and will continue to return to this game constantly. And just because I love mentioning it, if you can get it on the Switch, do it. It's what I play on, and it runs like a dream. Bonus points if you can get used to the handheld mode's smaller buttons. You will have one of, if not the best fighting game of the decade anywhere you go. But be wary if your Joy-Cons are drifting like mine are. You might have friends who think they're better than you, but I can assure you, you're not. My controller's messed up. That wasn't my fault. I'm better. I'm better. I'm better, Nick. If you're a fan of Dragon Ball and haven't tried this game out, you're doing yourself a disservice. If you're a fan of fighting games and you haven't tried this game out, you're doing yourself a disservice. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that Videl is a character and she needs to be banned. Now, I don't have much to say about Titanfall 2, but I do think it's one of the best shooters to come out of this decade. We all know the story about how EA shafted Titanfall 2's release window and basically left it to fend for itself against some of the biggest names in the FPS world, thus it fell into obscurity, but that speaks nothing to the quality displayed in this game. The campaign has often been referred to as the Half-Life 3 we never got because of the variety and expert design on display, and the multiplayer is even better. I have never been so content just running around and getting a kill or two in a multiplayer setting. Wall running and jetpacking and grappling have never felt so good in a game, and I still find that it's so admirable just how well balanced it all feels. You never feel at a disadvantage when running around as a pilot. You have such a mobility advantage on the gargantuan titans that you can survive if you know what you're doing. But when behind the cockpit, you know that a kill is much easier to get. And when Titan duels get stirred up, it feels like a game of chess, with mastery of control still being as important as ever. Titanfall 2 has been my go-to multiplayer game for this decade, and that's saying a lot. With Call of Duty releasing my personal favorite entry last year, Lost Planet 2 coming back into my life when I needed it most, and Halo landing on my computer with some updated visuals and mouse and keyboard support, buy this game on Steam, or wherever you can get it. It's usually on sale for cheap these days, and it's very worth it. Please play Titanfall 2. Please. Whoa, a second Sonic game on the Sonic fans list. That's crazy. Whoa, my God. While I personally jumped into Sonic with his debut into 3D, I have gone back and experienced his 2D titles, and I have loved most all of the 2D titles. Sorry, Elliot, not that one. So you better believe that when Mania came out, just like everyone else, it caused me to have a meltdown of joy. The quality level design is my main takeaway here. It's so expansive, yet you never feel lost. There are lots of times to carefully platform, but the speed is always constant. The branches are always a lot of fun to get to, but the game never feels lesser for those who aren't as skilled. It's a perfectly paced platforming game. And that's without all the fan service. If you have been with this franchise, or are at least in on some of the running gags, you'll have such a goofy smile on your face the entire time. Plus, the soundtrack is probably my second favorite in the series. Press Garden Act 2, Flying Battery Act 1, Knuckles variant of Mirage Saloon, Green Hill Act 2, I could go further, but I don't need to. It is nothing but non-stop amazing music. And I don't need to be the millionth person to sing the praises of Mania, but when the game is this good, it's difficult to not. Play it on the Switch or play it on the anything. Sonic Mania never slows down in any area. this is a must play. No in-card joke, just buy Sonic Mania! I'm gonna go ahead and criticize myself here. My Boneworks video thumbnail sends the wrong message. It looks like some stupid meme post, and I think that caused people to skim over it as a serious review for the game. And I'm way too much of a stickler to go back and fix it now, but personal failings aside, man, do I absolutely adore this game. And most of all the problems I initially had in that video have been fixed. I said the levels can be too lengthy and not really conducive to a first playthrough. Someone just taking in the sights and playing a level for the first time might spend over an hour in a single level with no breaks, and that's asking for nothing but trouble when VR sickness is very real. Thus, they've added checkpoints everywhere, which is perfect. I said that your hands freaked out and didn't do climbing in the best way. They fixed a lot of the contact points on the hands, and climbing doesn't make me dread existence anymore. And I don't know if I said it in that video, but I wanted some more stuff to do, so boom! More levels, challenges, play areas, and collectibles have been added to play and hunt down. The game has just consistently been what I go back to. It's simply so much fun to play, and I know I've said that for every other game on this list, but this is probably the one I'm in it the most for. I usually don't find myself replaying games all that often unless it involves a blue hedgehog, but Boneworks VR physics makes for such a great experience every time you hop in. Going back in and finding new hidden treasures is such a joy. Some of the new challenges have come with their own collectibles to find, and bringing all the treasures back to the reclamation bins at the end of the level never gets old. It's so satisfying to unload your haul for the level after scouring every nook and cranny to build up your collection in the museum. There are other VR games that I've definitely gone back to frequently, like Half-Life Alyx and Pavlov, and if I'm being frank, Alyx and Pavlov have way more fan-made content and maps than Boneworks does right now, meaning that I could potentially have way more time with fresh content in both of those games. But in something like Alyx, there's not a whole lot of freedom in approaching situations. There's no melee or any creative ways to use the environment or physics to stop the enemies. It's all just about shooting and throwing grenades, which there's nothing wrong with that, and excluding any special game types, it's the same way for Pavlov. And it goes without saying that the presentation and atmosphere is second to none in Alyx, but Boneworks is just so much more fun to play as a video game. The guns feel better to use here than in either of them, and while I still want a shotgun or something similar in Boneworks, I feel so similar to familiar situations in both games. Like, I'm still just as much of a bitch in VR no matter the game.
Jesus Christ. Oh, I hate those things so much. Oh my god.
Not to mention, Boneworks is the best game at letting me relieve stress just because I can do stuff like this. Oh, and something that I failed to mention in my initial meme-tacular video, the soundtrack is great. Lots of great heavy synth jams that pack in some nice melodies. And it should go without saying, but the scavenger hunts the post-game turns into is made infinitely better by the amazing level design. I really just made this whole video so I can tell you about this game for a second time. I'm currently going back through the game without using any ammo because there's this level at the very end where you can buy super rare and powerful guns, and I want them all for my museum. But I doubt I'll ever get sick of just hunting through all the levels after they keep getting repopulated with new things to find and discover. I know VR is super expensive and this video will not inspire any of you to go out and buy a headset, but I'm telling you all, VR is not a gimmick like some might lead you to believe. The Game Awards are happening right now, and I respect a lot of the nominees, but I think Half-Life Alyx deserves to be Game of the Year. Trailer footage, gameplay videos, reviews, none of that does a VR game justice. You have no idea what it's like until you put that headset on and get inside the world. And when I tell you that I like Boneworks more than my #1 game of 2020, you know it's the shit. Whew. Alright, so once again, this is not a de facto list of the greatest games of the decade. This is just a very personal look back at some of the games that I found myself thinking back to the most. And some of my favorite games didn't even make it onto the list. Metal Gear Rising is one of my favorite combat systems in video games. I don't actually own Breath of the Wild even if I think it's brilliant. I spent a lot of time with Dark Souls 3 and need to go back through it honestly, and Icy is probably one of my favorite indie games ever created. But none of these necessarily occupy my mind after I put the controller down. So with that being said, I need to now give you all updates on everything and my closing thoughts on this year and the progress we've made as a channel. 2020 has simultaneously had great things that have happened to me, but also absolutely terrible things. It's been hard. I've had COVID, I had to call an ambulance for my dad at 3 a.m. a few weeks ago, I was recovering from open heart surgery at the beginning of this year, and I lost a really good friend. There's just been a lot of uncertainty, but I know you all have probably been dealing with a lot too. I'm ready for this year to be over and done. But on the bright side, I'm very happy that we now have 400 of you all watching, especially when you think about how we started this year out with less than 100. I got engaged. Have I mentioned how much I love my VR?
Makes noise. No, 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 no. No, 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 no. Shoot, shoot.
I'm in the process of moving into a new house where I'll have amazing internet, which will make video production a lot easier. I adopted a puppy, I found a viable way to make movie reviews, and I really am just so appreciative of all of you guys, you loyal fans that we've accumulated, as small as the number might be. And I understand that if we were to only focus on making Sonic-themed content, we'd probably gain subscribers more consistently and faster, but I don't think any of us want to be limited in that way. We have a lot of fun doing everything else. We wouldn't be able to do all the cool videos we've done, especially this year. The Lost Planet retrospective is still something I'm very proud of. And there are lots of other videos I feel the same way about this season. We've got lots of ideas and we're going to be changing our look up just a little bit next year for Season 4, so there is still plenty to be excited for on Command Prompt. And I'm actually going to leave a poll for what the season premiere should be, and I'm in a bit of a blue mood, so all the options will be Sonic focused. And until then, I look forward to talking to you guys in the next video. If you're interested, you can follow myself, the official Command Prompt Twitter, or my channel artist and partners using the links in the description below. But anyway, I appreciate you all so much for watching this year. So thanks for stopping by, and have a great Christmas and New Year.